Hey, y'all, it's your man Brandon Stubbs, another episode of Punch the Face Radio. Glad you're joining me here this evening. As you can tell in the voice, I am now pretty much back to 100% after being ridiculously sick the last 2 weeks. But nevertheless, we're here for you, the boxing fans. This is what we do. But as I still recoup and still get back to tip-top condition, I am joined by a big homie of mine, a brethren, a veteran of these podcasts here, especially through Blog Talk Radio, as our days working on the ruckus. The one and only Ismael AbduSalaam of BeatsBoxingMayhem.com. We're also going to make sure we talk about the Knicks before you go tonight. So be clear, we will talk about the Knicks. Ismael, man, brother, it's glad to have you back on the show. It's been too long. Appreciate you taking the time here this evening to talk some boxing.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. I was thinking back to the last time I was on the show, and I believe, to show you how long it's been, I really think it was before Ward Kovalev 2. So, I mean, Ward, an active fighter. I mean, now he's a commentator. I'm pretty sure Kovalev is on a bench somewhere at the moment. So a lot has happened since then. So I'm glad I was able to make it back.
That's a very considerable amount of time. Oh, man, that's some time. But, I mean, a good time to join the show because what happened this past weekend is, I mean, I got it wrong. Co-host Admiral Bromowitz also got it wrong. Damn near everyone got it wrong. We all thought Anthony Joshua, the bigger, naturally larger fighter of the two, would go in and somewhat maybe bully his way to a victory against Oleksandr Usyk, and that didn't happen. Were you shocked at the way the fight actually ended up playing out and how fast of a start Usyk got? I mean, what were your initial impressions watching that fight and how it unfolded from start to finish?
Well, I had to eat a lot of crow, too, because I was teasing some of the people on my timeline, like, oh, you're going to be owing me an apology, because I also picked Joshua by decision. I thought he was really going to start dominating down the stretch. So initially, when he was having problems with the speed and the angles that Usyk was giving him, I wasn't that concerned. And then when we got to the middle rounds where he started working the body a little bit, I'm like, okay, Joshua coming back into it. Usyk is going to slow down. What really shocked me was about those last 4 rounds when he really just took it to Joshua and just kind of broke his will. He just wore him out mentally, physically. He just couldn't do anything with him. And, and that was a 15-round fight. Joshua really got laid out. Really if it was 30 more seconds, it looked like he was about to go down or it was about to be a TKO stoppage. So the way that he just kind of steamrolled him those last 2 rounds, that was very surprising to me. We know Joshua is not like a bully, physical type fighter. But the majority of the smaller guys, he's been able to kind of hurt and really take out. Look at Carlos Takam. The only one that he really, to me, had issues with was Joseph Parker, as far as really being able to hurt somebody smaller. So even though he did, cut up Usyk, the fact that Usyk was just able to handle everything he threw at him and then just dominate him down the stretch, that was the most surprising part to me and kind of really concerns me, if you're a Joshua fan, how the rematch is going to go, especially it being an immediate rematch.
Yeah, I think my initial reaction was how I don't even know. I guess the word energetic would be one way of using it. Almost kind of remind me of Manny Pacquiao's movement, which we will talk about later in the show. I mean, how Usyk started out. I mean, he was herky-jerky and just he wasn't a clean target for Joshua to hit or Joshua to get in any sort of rhythm early on, and I think that kind of really that threw him off. He didn't have a plan B, but Usyk did slow down, which I would figure would happen, but he caught that second win. And like you said, those last 4 rounds of that fight were just, especially maybe the last 2, were almost like Joshua just didn't seem to really 100% want to be there. That last round was kind of tough to watch. He just seemed totally broken. He had the swollen eye. He did fight through it. I don't want to say he quit. I'm not going to paint that kind of picture, but I thought going into the fight he was going to fight a fight similar to what he did in Ruiz 2 and what he did earlier going against Pulev, where he's going to jab and be a boring fight and just, ugly it out to get the win or, do it enough to where he can finally find his spot, land a big shot like he did with Pulev and finally get the stoppage. But it just never happened. He was never able to get in a rhythm and stay in it. And you have to give credit to Usyk for that and not so much saying Joshua had no game plan. It's just Usyk was the better boxer of the two. And We just didn't know that was going to play such an overwhelming hand in this fight, given that it's heavyweights. You typically don't talk about heavyweights outboxing one another. You're looking for somebody to get KO'd and laid out, and that just didn't happen this Saturday.
That's a very good point. And one other thing I underestimated was the fact that there was no downtime in this fight. There was no lulls in the action. Joshua was having to constantly either punch or move. There was no time for him to kind of recuperate, take a round off. And as big as he is, that's going to wear on a fighter that size. And the thing about Usyk that I underestimated, we keep hearing, oh, he's a cruiserweight. He's a blown-up cruiserweight. Blah, blah. You hear that constantly. Usyk is, yes, he is smaller than Joshua, but he is not a small man. Stephen Breadman Edwards brought up a good point. Usyk is 6'3", 220. That's pretty much the same dimensions as a 70s Muhammad Ali, who we consider, consensus either the number 2 or number 1 greatest heavyweight of all time. So Usyk is not a small guy. And any man that's over 200 pounds throwing full weight at you can hurt you. And, those first 30 seconds of the fight, Usyk popped him with like 2 clean straight lefts. And that kind of set the tone there, because when I was watching it, I was like, okay, eventually he's going to start bullying him, because we've seen this happen before with a really good smaller guy and a really good bigger guy. For those of you who haven't seen Muhammad Ali versus Bob Foster in 1972, Bob Foster was, the long-reigning light heavyweight. He's moving up to heavyweight. He is the only person that's actually ever cut Muhammad Ali in the fight. He was out-jabbing Ali earlier, and he was able to meet his speed. He was a naturally faster fighter. Ali was having problems with that. So what did Ali do? Started bullying him, roughhousing him on the inside, leaning on him, ended up knocking him down 5 times. I think he KO'd him in the 7th round. We can use another example, a more recent one, not even heavyweight, Golovkin and Kell Brook. What was happening in that fight? Kell Brook, the speed, he was touching Golovkin up early. What did Golovkin do? Made it a slugfest, started getting on the inside and just broke him down, broke his eye socket. And another just quick example, bigger guy, naturally bigger guy, Rocky Marciano. Archie Moore, who was the reigning light heavyweight champion, same thing. Archie Moore was timing him early, knocked him down early. What did Marciano do? Started steamrolling him, made it a slugfest, broke him against the ropes to knock him out. So why couldn't Joshua do that? Well, what's the big difference between Marciano, Golovkin, and Muhammad Ali? The only really big difference is, besides the skills, obviously, is the chin. Joshua, he's not a super chinny fighter, but he can be hurt. And I think that's what was in the back of his mind, because if Usyk wasn't hurting him, he would have been able to implement a strategy like that. But he wasn't seeing where the punches were coming from. He was getting stung by them, and that little bit of hesitation was why his jab was so off and why he couldn't really get off with any of his hooks. It was just a masterful performance all around.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, I mean, now it kind of begs the question of this, what adjustments can Anthony Joshua make if he's going to go immediately to this rematch, which Eddie Hearn is saying. Eddie Hearn did an interview today and said, Anthony Joshua looked at him like he was going to strangle him for even asking the question, which I thought was quite hilarious. So we know we're going to get that rematch, but what can he do differently? There's already skeptics saying, he needs to get a different trainer. He needs to do this. He needs to do that. I don't know. And even I made the knee-jerk reaction here over the weekend saying, and this was wrong. I got to take this back, and I didn't mean to disrespect Anthony Joshua like this, but I said, is he this version of Victor Ortiz? And what I meant by that, I do need to get clarification, is, I know, right, is that, Victor Ortiz was an extremely talented guy at his peak, but seems like at times lacked the testicular fortitude. And I don't want to say people lack heart, but in Victor's case, you question a bit. And in boxing terms, and we hear this term a lot, do you have that dog in you? And I don't know at times 100% that Anthony Joshua has that dog in him that he's going to need in order to really flourish as being a heavyweight champion, wanting to go down a legend. All legends have some semblance of dog in them. I mean, we've seen all of them have to have those moments where they got to just turn it up a notch. And I don't always see that from Anthony Joshua. I mean, I saw it in the Klitschko fight, the Dillian White fight. I thought he turned it up when White had hurt him. He kind of stepped it up a notch, but I haven't seen that in recent years. So I wonder, does he have that in him to really flourish? And, I don't think he's going to be able to make many different changes for a rematch to play out any different.
That is a very good point. There's a lot of questions mentally where he's at, because honestly, his best chance is what a lot of us have been saying here's the irony. His best chance is probably the one that makes him more susceptible to being knocked out. And that's really going after Usyk, really trying to implement your size, make it a slugfest, and be willing to go out on your shield. It's very easy to say that outside of the ring, but it's a different thing to go in there saying, I'm going to risk getting knocked out and hit with a shot I don't see coming by a guy that's a masterful boxer that sets traps, that already busted my eye up, and he's a southpaw at the same time. So it's already the stance issue that I'm having. Can he mentally do that? Can he mentally just say, it's either going to be him or me? I'm going to go in there. I'm going to get on the inside. I'm going to work the body. I'm going to lean on him. I'm going to force exchanges, and whatever happens, happens. That, to me, is his best chance of winning. But like you said, can he go there? There's a chance he can, because, hearing all the backlash and everything, if he's really as pissed off as Eddie Hearn claimed, he might be willing to do that. We've seen rematches where there's been, severe reversals of fortune. But there's a question mark. We've never seen him actually do that before, and to me it's against his temperament since what happened in the first Ruiz fight. So can he get back there? Especially if it's not an old man, but he is over 30. And I believe for the Ruiz rematch, he made like $85 million. So, he is very, very comfortable at this stage. You've pretty much been to the mountaintop. You've been a unified champion. Can you go back to the well? Are you still hungry like that, where you can look at this man like he took something from me, and I'm just going to go all out? I'm not sure if he can do that either.
I mean, and then you have this other kind of wild card that may play out here in a couple of weeks. We'll see what actually happens here with Wilder Fury Part 3. But there's already been a notion of, okay, we're going to pay somebody some step-aside money for, proverbially Tyson Fury versus Oleksandr Usyk. We're going to finally have unification, and then Josh will step in and automatically get a rematch against whoever holds all the belts. It sounds sexy on paper. It sounds like a great idea. It's not going to happen. Trust me, Dillian White's going to be somewhere pouting and complaining about it again with the WBC if he gets jerked over again, which at this point, right. I get his point. But I don't know. I just don't see a rematch playing out much differently. I think Usyk has definitely cemented himself. And we got to, as much as we're critiquing Joshua, we got to give Usyk a ton of credit because he did something that a lot of us didn't think he could do. And I saw Adam Obama would say he hated the phrase masterclass used a lot, but I won't say it was a masterclass. I will just say he was a class above Anthony Joshua. And what he did at the cruiserweight division is now proving that he can do that in the heavyweight division. So kudos to him. I've seen him keeping that belt for a while, or as long as he wants to. The caveat I have with Usyk is he has been injury-prone, and these injuries typically happen in training camp. So as much as I'm excited about him being the world champion, I also know that this fight has been delayed, or other fights have been delayed by him getting injured, having shoulder injuries, and having shoulder issues. So I'm a little bit, still not wanting to, scream and shout, but I got to keep that in the back of my mind about his injury history.
Right, definitely. And that's part of the reason why I think so many of us didn't believe that he could beat Joshua. He had been injury-prone, long bouts of inactivity, and let's face it, his two fights at heavyweight were not spectacular. Derek Chisora is a very solid, contender, journeyman level for the most part at this stage in his career, and he had a lot of problems with him. So a lot of us was like, okay, if you have a problem with, that type of pressure and that type of size, what are you going to do with a fighter that's a class above him? So, but he shut all of us up. So I like his chances against somebody like Wilder just because Wilder kind of leans back and just waits for that big shot, so there's a lot of inactivity. But, of course, there's still questions about could he take a flush Deontay Wilder shot. I mean, he took some flush shots from Anthony Joshua, but, Wilder to me is a stronger puncher, and he's a fast trigger hitter. So he's more susceptible to me to hit Usyk with something he doesn't see coming as opposed to Joshua. So there's that question there, even though I like his chances against him. Fury, that's a fascinating fight just from a stylistic perspective. It's like, okay, we know Usyk is the better boxer, but Fury is 6'9". I mean, And he controls the ring with his jab. How are you going to be able to get around that? I don't expect that to be an exciting fight whatsoever, but I'd love to see it just from an intrigue perspective. It's like who can implement their style the best. But I think, honestly, skill-wise, he is the best heavyweight that we have right now, to me, just based on what he showed in that Joshua fight. His problem is going to be just size to me. I wouldn't make him the favorite against Tyson Fury. I do believe, just based on what we've seen so far, I still do favor Fury to beat Wilder again if he shows up the same way he did in the second fight, and that's a big if, because there's been this time off. That's my only big question. But if it's the same Fury, the same focus, same weight, I expect him to, beat Wilder convincingly, and then we'll have that showdown with Usyk to settle the score.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I was going to actually kind of transition to ask you some questions about that. I mean, we saw Tyson Fury. Well, I got to see screenshots since I didn't get invited by Top Rank to the Tyson Fury virtual press conference here this afternoon. And, I mean, he looks, he's shirtless and he's talking the talk, he's flexing, he's looking the part a little bit. But you do kind of have to wonder with the delays that have happened with this fight, with the alleged COVID that he had. You don't want to say no one didn't have it. Because that's, we want to paint that picture, but, there's rumors floating around whether he did it just to give him some more time to prepare.
Right.
You see Deontay Wilder really looking good in these training camp videos, working with Malik Scott, who's a first-time head trainer, and especially at a level like this, an event like this. We said last week, and I'm still going to kind of hold off on my pick, which I'm still leaning a little bit towards Wilder because I think he's a wounded, angry animal. But I want your perspective on something like this. Is the key going to be whether Deontay Wilder can make adjustments compared to the second fight, or is it going to be more of if no matter what adjustments he makes, if Tyson Fury's head's on straight, he's going to get his head boxed off for as long as the fight goes?
It's going to be a combination of both, but I think it more so leans what Tyson Fury's preparation and mind state is. I think if they're both at 100%, Fury just has more ways to win, to me. The majority of the rounds that they boxed, Fury was in the lead. He outboxed him in the majority of the rounds. The big equalizer was the power. So if Fury's able to take away his power like he did before, that kind of neutralizes what Deontay can do because he's not going to be able to outbox Fury for 12 rounds. So that's where my trepidation comes in, because we've seen what happened to Fury last time after he had a huge win over Klitschko. He totally just went off the rails. In this case, he wanted to get that Joshua fight, and he admitted on the press conference today, he was actively rooting for Joshua, and it was a big letdown to see him lose. And I'm pretty sure it was even a bigger letdown to say, you can't have this fight now. You got to go back and fight a guy that you knocked out. So mentally, he's saying all the right things, I'm focused and all that, but are you really that focused after getting, the biggest UK fight ever, which it would have been, at least financially, taken away from you? Do you still have the motivation to fight Deontay Wilder? Now, on Wilder's end, I have liked everything that I've seen so far. The one thing I didn't like is how he looked, practicing those body punches, but we can kind of forgive that because that's not his forte, especially at his height. But everything else, he really hasn't put himself out there too much. I haven't heard a lot of excuses. He hasn't gone back to all the conspiracy theories before. He's pretty much shut all that down, basically said, I'm focused. We're not seeing any sparring footage of him. So it seems like he's dialed in mentally to where he needs to be. I just think that he needs a little help from Fury not being as focused to pull this off. But it's like you can never doubt that power. If he can actually consistently work behind his jab like he's done before, in spots against people like Severn in the first fight, he could surprise people. But on the other hand, what else did Tyson Fury say in that press conference? He said, I'm going out guns blazing in the first round. So if he comes to him looking for a slugfest and puts Wilder on on his heels again, that's interesting. Could we get the heavyweight version of Hagler Hearns, and whoever has the best chin survives? That wouldn't surprise me either.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the fight. I actually hope the fight happens. Let me start there. I said until I see them in the ring, October the 9th, opening bell, I'll believe it when I see it. But we have a lot of, heavyweights on the undercard. It's just a very interesting card. It sucked that it got delayed. I'm glad it's happening, and I'm glad for both fights. They can finally just be done with this. Once this fight is over, that's it. No more of it. They can move on. for better or worse. So I just hope we get a clear, decisive winner next week. And, obviously on next week's show, I'll break down a little bit more of my thoughts and impressions and give an official fight pick. This will be during fight week, but still slightly leaning towards Deontay Wilder to pull off I guess would be an upset at this point.
Now, you made me think about something. I didn't even consider this. What happens if we got another draw? What happens then?
Don't put that in the universe. Don't do that. Don't.
Can you imagine? We don't want that. I know for sure they wouldn't fight again. If a draw happened, they just say the hell with each other. But as far as like the commentary that would come out from that, from both camps, that would be, oh man, that would be insufferable. I'm pretty sure they both would go their separate ways though. But that would be, like you said, it would be awful.
It would be one of the worst things that could happen for the division. But it kind of would be. But here's the interesting caveat with that now. With Usyk now winning the belt, and we know he's going to rematch Joshua, okay, well, the Fury Wilder ended up being a draw. We have some kind of controversial ending. They could really do a fourth fight. I mean, that still sets up time for whoever wins that to meet whoever wins the rematch of Joshua Usyk. So it could balance out, but, I mean, just for the sake of getting fresh matchups, I hope it doesn't happen. I really don't. I thoroughly hate rematches and rematch clauses. It's gross to me. But sometimes, I mean, in the sport of boxing, it's going to happen. I mean, it's part of the sport. So I hope we get a clear, decisive winner. God, I hope you didn't put that out in the universe for this to be a shit show next week. If it does, you're the first person I'm coming after.
Right. It was the first time I thought of that, too. I'm like, man, what if we do get a draw? Ugh. Or somebody pops dirty after the fight. How about that?
Oh, God. Oh, no, not that. Please, not that. But that's kind of a perfect transition now to the next topic of the week. It's also kind of been well, the hell is it? It's a shit show. The whole Triller, Teofimo Lopez, George Kambosos fight is now completely in limbo. I don't know if it's going to occur, who's going to cover it or what. So the latest is the fight that was scheduled to happen here next Monday at the Hulu Theater in Madison Square Garden in New York has now been completely canceled. You bought tickets, you need a refund. So if you're in New York or looking to travel to fight, definitely contact you. You could purchase your tickets through and get a full refund from my understanding. But now the fight's in limbo as Kambosos has not signed his agreement to face Lopez here on a change date of October 16th. Triller, it sounds like they're going to end up defaulting with their deal with the IBF to have the fight by October 17th. Eddie Hearn was the next person who had the next highest bid. So he said, we would be the default promoter. We don't know what's happening with this. And then you have Teofimo Lopez going on Twitter pretty much calling George Kambosos a hoe and saying he's making a hoe move by not signing the contract. This is utterly confusing. This is ugly, and it's not a shocker. The saying is all money ain't good money, and this is one of those things with Triller where their money literally at times is not good money.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is I remember, when they won that first bid, how happy Teofimo was. He was like, yes, I made it. I'm getting what I deserve. He was having a good old time on Twitter, which I don't blame him. He was making close to $4 million for a mandatory defense. But like you said, all money isn't good money. And look at all the mess that has transpired since then. I think we've had 6 different date changes. Teofimo caught COVID. Kambosos is still in Australia. Apparently he went through litigation and is telling people he got a different contract, or Teofimo signed believing that Kambosos had already agreed to the October 16th change. It is a mess, and this is all for a mandatory defense. So the fight is probably not going to be that good, number one. And number two, and the biggest issue is that all the momentum Teofimo had after beating Lomachenko is completely dust, gone. He's become a complete afterthought after having the biggest win of last year. And now you're out of the ring for by the time they get in the ring, if it does happen in October, it'll be nearly a full calendar year out of the ring for both of them. It's a travesty. And it's like, the sad thing about boxing is like we always talk about we need new blood. We want new blood. We want fresh ideas and everything. But you really do have to know the business. You really got to have people on your team that know what they're doing and have been in boxing for a while. I know that seems counterproductive because it feels like you're bringing in people who've been doing things, the same way for decades now. But these people know boxing. These people have relationships. Look what happened with Throne Boxing, the Rock Nation. They didn't have that infrastructure of knowledgeable boxing people. They had all that money, but it didn't amount to anything. And we're having the same thing happen with Triller now. They got the money, but they don't understand the boxing business and understand they're throwing money at people, and this is what we get. And it's going to be a cautionary tale from now on. I think Teofimo, he's learned a hard lesson. And I know, of course, you're going to always have any issues with your promoter, but I think he's going to be a lot more agreeable with Top Rank now when he works with them in the future, because any issues that he had with them pales in comparison to what he's been going through over the last year.
Yeah, I mean, this whole purse bid thing drove a wedge between him and Top Rank, where they had issues here over the summer that finally got patched up here in recent months. So, they kind of got back on the same page. The plan was for him to have another fight underneath the Top Rank banner on ESPN before this year is out. That, at this juncture, is not going to happen. I mean, you've got Lopez when he was in Arizona during the Oscar Valdez card saying that, pretty much after this fight, he's moving up to 140. It's so many different narratives that can happen here. I mean, he could literally just say, bleep it at this point and drop the belts, make the move to 140. I mean, he's wanting to face a guy like Josh Taylor, who already has an opponent. Josh Taylor's maybe even looking to go up to 147. So it's so many different moving pieces to where you just don't know what's going to happen with who. And the guy that I honestly now am feeling more and more sorry for is George Kambosos through all this because, I mean, he's done everything he was supposed to do. I mean, it's not his fault that he's a mandatory. It's not his fault that he is, he got involved in this purse bid. None of this is his fault. I mean, Teofimo Lopez is the name and the attraction here. And, Kambosos he just wants to fight for the belt. And that's what it is at the end of the day. And then he's kind of getting strung along by all of this. I mean, this first started here with Triller having a fight card down in Florida, same weekend as Floyd Mayweather's exhibition fight, and they didn't want to compete with the Floyd Mayweather fight, so they moved the date. And then it just kind of changed the snowball from there to where I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, the funny thing about all of this, if we can remember how a lot of this kind of started and how the issues were between Teofimo Lopez and Top Rank, how the email went out to Eddie Hearn and Matchroom about how they didn't want them bidding on the fight, meaning Top Rank. And it could be the funniest thing that Eddie Hearn may end up with the fight after all. After all of this, Eddie Hearn may have the last laugh and actually have this fight. And, it's going to be one fight deal with both these guys. He won't have any options on them. But, that could be the most ironic thing out of all this. He could still end up with the fight. It's crazy.
The fight might end up in Rhode Island with Andre, the way things are going.
We joke when we say that, but there's a lot of truth to that.
I wouldn't put it past Eddie. I know he's thinking, hey, I'm going to put both of y'all together. We're going to make this work.
I mean, at this rate, why not? I mean, they want the fight to happen before the year is out. I know both these guys just want to get this fight and move on. It would help bring some eyes to both. It would help Andre have some extra eyes looking at him. And I mean, it's a weird, crazy situation with all of this. And this just goes to show sometimes that, again, all money's not good money. And he should have maybe listened to Top Rank and listened to what they were trying to tell him. But a hard head makes a soft bottom. So the saga continues. We'll probably have another update on next week's show. What a mess. Just what a complete mess.
They need to take a page from pro wrestling and do this like an empty arena match. Just get it over with. No fans, empty arena, no announcer. They just walk out, slug away till somebody falls.
Have it at your nearest gym at this point. I mean, in all honesty, I mean, they have what they call have a smokers, they call them. Have it at a gym, be done with it. I mean, and move on. I mean, I don't see Kambosos doing anything to beat Teofimo Lopez. I mean, it feels like just a foregone conclusion. That's what's going to happen. But, at this rate and the way boxing is so weird anymore, you just never know. I mean, I want Kambosos to get his opportunity. I mean, the guy's earned it. It's just everybody's just in a weird spot, and it's unfortunate that now Even the undercard fighters, they're now in limbo. I mean, that's shifted and changed so much. It's just complete nonsense that what Triller's doing. We'll see if they're around this time here next year. The Rock Nation comparison's a good one. We also had S&M Boxing that was out there, SMS Boxing that was out there with.
Oh man, I forgot about that. Oof, dark time.
Yeah. So that was a fun one.
But didn't Triller say they wanted to combine it with another Versus, right?
That was
I heard that
rumor.
rumor too.
I mean, it was a rumor because, I mean, if they were going to put it on a pay-per-view on a Monday night for $49.99, let's be honest. Most boxing fans are football fans. That's two audience that they intertwine. So if you're telling me I can watch the Raiders and the Chargers on Monday Night Football for free, or pay $50 to watch Teofimo Lopez fight a mandatory and then miss Monday Night Football, I'm just doing simple math in my head there. That just doesn't make sense. So, for Triller to play anything on a Monday night and not realize Monday Night Football was going on, as their CEO, Kavanaugh, said he just realized there was a Monday Night Football game on. What world do you live in to not know football season's going on? I mean, you can be a non-football fan and know football season's going on. So it's just incredibly negligent on their behalf on what they're doing. I mean, I think the next event we're going to get from Triller in regards to boxing is going to be another one of these mashups where you have some sort of freak show of some sort, whether it be Oscar De La Hoya fighting, which I think he's still planning on doing at some point. They're planning for something in November. I don't know. It's making my head hurt a little bit. I'm not even going to lie about it. It's just utterly confusing times for that.
If they have some more fuckery up their sleeve with Triller, with this fight, this Teofimo fight, something else is going to go down. They're going to say something crazy like, we're pairing this with Maya versus A. Marie versus. There's going to be something crazy like that. I guarantee they're going to do something wild before this month is out. I don't think it's happening on the 16th, like you said. I really think they're going to try and pair this with some crazy verses like that.
Yeah, I mean, the hot rumor, it was a joke, J-Lo versus Mark Anthony, which I think, again, if you're putting that on pay-per-view, okay, you're gonna draw in an audience. Like, that makes sense.
True,
but
yeah.
They're going to need to do something to move the needle to get fight fans' attention. And I mean, and if you're not getting the fight fans' attention, you're going to have to get somebody's attention because, like you said, the momentum that Teofimo Lopez has, it's over and done with. Lomachenko is going to have another fight before Teofimo Lopez has his next at this rate. So it's very bizarre times for Teofimo Lopez in the belt that he holds. So we'll see. Now, I do want your take on something that you're actually very close to. Is we're seeing now an increasing boxing scene down in Atlanta. I mean, we have obviously Tank Davis has fought down there several times. This time next month we're going to have Jamel Herring defending his belt against Shakur Stevenson. And there's even a bubbling club show scene down there. So I've interviewed some fighters who are part of some of these club shows who have been down there. Ismael, with you living down there, seeing it and breathing it, is Atlanta on the cusp of becoming a major hub for boxing going forward in the next year?
Let me tell you, I've been running around screaming hallelujah for about 5 months now that we've been getting fights down here. I really thought it was going to open up a lot after Tank fought Gamboa back in 2019, but COVID kind of threw everything off and everything. I've actually spoke with Steven Espinoza about this a few times because I'm like, finally, this has always been an open market. We know what Atlanta brings as far as music, particularly hip-hop. Also the movie scene. There's a lot of movies that get shot down here. So entertainment-wise, the city is booming. It's been booming for a while, and I've always wondered why not boxing. Because I'll be honest with you, even being originally from New Jersey, all the fights I've covered out in Vegas. Those Vegas flights get old very quick from Atlanta. We're talking 3.5, 4 hours. So I was like, we need to finally get some big fights over here. So we've always had a strong club show scene. Buckhead Fight Club is one that does a lot of good shows down here. Pulse Boxing is another one that's coming up, and they're more of the hip-hop flavored scene as far as the events go. They're trying to combine a little bit of the two. We have a lot of good younger fighters coming up. There's one whose name is Mac Truck, that's his nickname. He's a heavyweight that's short. Like, he's like 5'9", and very wide, possibly like 230. But he fights like Dwight Muhammad Qali. So he's a very strong attraction. So someone to keep an eye on, Mac Truck Dakari. But there's a lot of fighters down here who are just looking for an opportunity. And luckily, a lot of them are going to be on the Herring Stevenson undercard. So I do think Tank has opened up the market and has shown, particularly with this last fight in June against Barrios, which was sold out. I was there. The crowd was jumping. Now, I'm not going to tell you that it was a boxing crowd. It kind of wasn't. But this is kind of what we need. It's funny. We talk about we want that casual audience, but when it comes, we get resentful because, you don't know boxing like we do. But this is where we as media, we kind of earn our keep. We really are truly media. This is our point to explain the sport, the nuances of it, and to make lifelong fans instead of pushing people away claiming, you don't know shit about boxing. You're a casual fan, blah, blah, blah. That's exactly what we don't need to do. You don't hear football fans, clowning somebody that might be a casual football fan because they don't know this particular route or this particular defensive scheme. It's like, no, they're embraced at all levels. So we need to start doing that with boxing because Tank has really brought in a completely different audience. Top Rank is really interesting how they're going to do this because I'm working on a story now about their return to the Atlanta scene. I've been talking with officials at State Farm Arena about it, talk with Bob Arum about it, because their last Atlanta show, believe it or not, was in 2007. And guess who was the headliner for that show? Kevin Kingpin Johnson, the heavyweight. And to give you an idea how long ago that was, he was undefeated at that time. He was a hot prospect. So, according to Bob, he was telling me that, I could hear you chuckling how long ago that was. According to Bob, he was saying that it just wasn't the right time. They were looking for the right fight to bring down here. And according to State Farm Arena, they were telling me that they've been reaching out to a lot of different promoters to bring a fight down here, particularly for that new arena. The first kind of indications that I saw that they were really serious about boxing outside of the Tank fights was they put a statue of Evander Holyfield outside of the arena. They had a big ceremony during Tank's fight week about that. Leonard Ellerby showed up. It was a really big event. The mayor came out. So I was like, okay, this is right outside the arena, really next door to, really around the corner from Dominique Wilkins from his statue outside. And those are the only two ones. So I'm like, okay, they're really trying to show that boxing can be viable down here. And the Hawks are doing great, so that helps a lot. That's brought out a lot of the Atlanta fans. So, and when I talked to Stephen Espinoza about it, he said Boots Ennis is somebody that he thinks would do really good down here. But I think all those type of fighters. I think Clarissa Shields should have fought down here a while ago. I think Stephen Fulton would do great down here. A lot of the younger fighters can really connect down here. And for the life of me, I don't understand why Adrian Broner never fought down here either. He should have been fought down here, before he kind of had his slide. So it's wide open.
Do you want AB down here? Hang on, though. Ismael, do you want AB down in Atlanta? I mean, granted, he's focused on the fight, and
I want the train wreck. I want to be there with my camera asking ridiculous questions. How you doing, AB? You look a little liquored up right now. What's going on? I will be that one. I will be fight hype and, reincarnated with just these off-the-wall questions. I want all that. I want a Broner fight week down here because, he's been down here because he's really cool with Tank. So I've seen him in the periphery, to support Tank and all that. But, a Broner actual fight week, oh, yes. Give me that. Give me Broner and Blair Cobbs fight week. Give me that down here. Give me that fight.
I think, honestly, the way those two guys are, I think that would be a perfect energy for down there. I mean, not to be that guy to say this, but, I think Atlanta would be the perfect fight for and a perfect fight hub for the bigger fight attraction, like I said, for the younger generation of fighters, the urban core. I mean, black boxing fans, we do exist. There's a lot of us. We spend money on fights. As you said, as you've traveled many times out to Vegas for fights, same way with me here. We come out. I'm saying this now. We about to come out for Sean Porter, Terrence Crawford here in November. They're going to come out in droves out there in Vegas. So having it in Atlanta, and I mean, that's kind of like your Black Hollywood, it makes sense. It's just, like you said, are the promoters willing to, I don't want to say risk it or really invest in that area, but I think it's a smart bet right now because I don't think you're going to lose, especially if you're marketing it right. Like you said, you're using local talent who's going to help sell tickets. You start tapping into some of those other resources that are already built into Atlanta with the music scene, the film industry, reality TV. A lot of that's filmed down there as well. So it's different industries that can be tapped into that boxing can help cross-promote the sport, and some of these athletes can become even bigger stars on those cross-platforms.
Absolutely. And when you talk about reality TV, a lot of those stars were out at the Tank fight, all of them, really. So, that type of crossover crowd, they will come out for fights. As much as the average person cannot name 10 active boxers, more than likely, when they hear about the big fight, they'll be drawn to it. Everybody's drawn to boxing. If it's the event for the weekend, it'll make noise. It'll make noise. People will come out for it. And then once you get them out here, once you give them an exciting fight, you have them hooked. So that is one thing I am a little concerned about. I knew, Tank and Barrios was going to deliver just from an action standpoint. I have some concerns about Stevenson and Herring, especially based on Shakur's last fight. And I asked him about this, and he said, this, with the stylistic thing, you're going to see a different fight. He flat out told me that he thinks Herring is weak to the body and he's going to go on the inside. Now, if we get that type of fight, especially with Herring's, ability to throw uppercuts like he did against Frampton, we could have a really good fight. But if we end up getting a fight that was like Shakur's last fight, that would be awful. I'm hoping the boxing guys don't deliver that because I'm expecting a good crowd, and the fight has to deliver in the ring. It has to really kind of keep people engaged. So.
Yeah, that's a good thing. It's a lot of cities like that I've said that I think are fight cities. My city where I'm from, Kansas City, I think is a fight town. If you put the product out there, people will come. And again, you got to get them hooked. You got to have a good product once they do come in the building. That's what we see with Tank. The Tank fights have been, as much of a knucklehead and an asshole I think he is, the brother delivers in the ring. We can't question that. So he's delivered. Like you said, the style-wise between Herring and Stevenson, I totally agree. There's a little bit of trepidation there, but I do think we're going to get a good fight. I think it's going to be one of those that a lot of fight fans may not get to see the nuances right away, but I think it's going to break down into being a war back half of that fight. I really do think so. So crossing my fingers that I can get some PTO approved to make it down there because, like you said again, it is far cheaper for me to fly from the Midwest to Atlanta compared to Vegas. So I will gladly take any opportunity to save some money to see a fight, to travel, because, like you said, it's one of those things. The energy in Vegas, it's different, and I kind of saw the change the last few Mayweather fights. That the energy's not what it used to be for a big fight in Vegas. Now, I don't know what it's going to be like here in a week and a half here for Wilder Fury. I can't say it's heavyweights. I don't know. It could be big energy. It may not. I don't know what it'll be for Caleb Plant Canelo. I know Canelo brings the people out, but the energy just doesn't seem the same. And I wonder if fight fans are getting a little bit of fatigue of being boxing in the same spots. It's been very interesting seeing, Atlanta being able to have fights here during the pandemic. Texas has been a big fight hub over the last year.
Absolutely.
With them pretty much their state pretty much saying, screw COVID, we don't care, give us your money, come down here. Same way with Florida, but Florida, I ain't traveling Florida. Florida's Florida's weird.
Yeah, Florida's shaky. Yeah, that's a whole different breed down there. So yeah,
I can do a whole podcast on that one. But it's good to see those different cities getting opportunities to put on events and giving fight fans from those areas a chance to see big-time boxing instead of having to go to California, to L.A., to Staples Center, to Vegas, to any of the casinos there, or up to New York to Madison Square Garden. It's good to see those opportunities and these fights, and these fighters rotating. And literally be filled that, Tank Davis could fight whoever and can sell and can draw. I hope for his sake that Atlanta's a hub that he goes and he does a lot more fights too. Baltimore as well. I think he could fill up the arena where the Wizards play there in D.C. I think that would be a huge draw for him as well. So kudos to the cities getting fights as I will continue to sit on my hands and look pitiful here in Kansas City, wait for our opportunity to get a big fight.
All it takes is one to open the floodgates, man. And then one other thing I forgot to mention that Bob told me about, you remember that there was, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Teofimo's fight. I want to say it was somebody else, maybe Joe Smith. There was supposed to be a fight at Madison Square Garden that they canceled, and they mentioned the reason why they canceled it Actually, I think it was Shakur's fight. The site fee, they said, was just too expensive to be at Madison Square Garden. So that's what made Atlanta an attractive option for them, because State Farm Arena has a more reasonable site fee and is more willing to work with them and helping them to promote. So I really think when boxing promoters see, they should already seen it with Tank's fight, but I think when they see it with this fight with Herring and Stevenson, that might make them more open to bringing some of their fighters down here, because, I mean, the State Farm Arena is a great arena, too, for basketball, any type of sports, concerts. You know, they work well with media, too. I didn't have any problems getting quotes from them and talking with people, and they remember you, too. You know, I was walking around in the Tank fight, you know, they were calling me by name, you know, like, you know who I am? You know, because a lot of times it's really dismissive like that when you're doing media in Vegas, unless you're, you know, the real big name guys. So, you know, they're very personable, and I think that's really going to help, you know, with boxing people down here. So I'm really hopeful, I would say in the next 2 years or so, I think we'll get to the stage where we can get 2 or 3 big fights here. I would love, my dream fight would be to have Crawford and Spence down here. You know, I know it's not Dallas. I know Spence right now, he probably feels like the A side. So I would probably lean towards Vegas or maybe Dallas. You know, I'm pretty sure Crawford might not go for that. So Atlanta's more of a long shot, but I would love for that fight to happen down here. I think the audience would just be on fire for it.
I mean, that screams stadium fight to me. So whether you have that at Cowboy Stadium, which, you know, everyone knows my beloved Cowboys, I would always, you know, pick there. But if you have it at an Allegiant Stadium out there in Vegas where the Raiders play, or even now the Mercedes-Benz Stadium there where the Falcons play, which is another beautiful facility you guys have down there. If you're going to have a big fight and you're thinking that's a mega fight as far as I'm concerned, that feels football stadium-like, and all 3 of those would be fantastic options. Let's hope we can get there. Let's hope Spence is okay. But I'm with you. I think, you know, let's have it in a different place. Let's have it in Dallas. Let's have it in Atlanta. You know, let's get away from some of those other hubs we used to have fights at to help build that and help get some more eyes and build new fans and build new pockets of fans in different states and different cities compared to you know, what we've had before. I mean, I even know this is something else kind of back in my old days of covering mixed martial arts, being media for there. You know, the UFC's only been there like one time, which was really surprising to me that, again, they have tons of training camps that are there in that area and then along, you know, that the East Coast, along there, the Carolinas, even North Florida, that to where they have a built-in fan base there. And again, Atlantis is one of those they've been to one time and haven't been back to again, which is another interesting thing. So again, fight fans, if you want fights in your cities, you got to let these promoters know. You got to help push and promote the fighters that come out of your city and encourage them to try to get hometown fights and get the ball rolling to see some action in your respective city.
Exactly. Do it before the Paul brothers decide to come down here.
They take everything over.
Oh, yeah, they saw that. I'm pretty sure they saw Gervonta's fight like, Atlanta wouldn't be so bad.
Now, again, you're putting stuff out in the universe we don't need you to put out there. We need you to relax. Put stuff out there. Now, I did want your take on this because now it's been made official. You know, Manny Pacquiao posted a video pretty much thanking everyone, officially announcing his retirement. You know, he's now all in with the politics and running for the presidency in the Philippines. I know I saw your tweet earlier about, you know, you've had the opportunity to cover some of his fights. I've actually had the opportunity to go see several of his fights in person. I mean, for me, Manny he's a top 5 guy as far as I'm concerned, top 5 personally in my all time, because he fought everyone, and he fought them at their best or at their peak. He didn't fight them when they were diminished. He didn't make them fight him at, you know, specific weird weights or anything like that. He said, all right, you want to fight, let's fight. He did that, and I mean, that's one thing about him I respect, and one thing that I love about him. I'm still a little bit bitter about the beating that I witnessed him giving my guy Miguel Cotto and my mother crying as we're watching that fight, and I'm having to console her, and that was not fun. That was my first time actually watching live. Not fun event there. But he gained my respect that night. Manny Pacquiao was the guy that after me falling out of love with boxing and not watching it for about a 3 to 4 year stretch, my best friend Jay said, yo, you got to watch this guy. This guy's insane. And I can't remember which fight it was he had on his DVR, but I know after a night of drinking, we came back to his house. We watched it on the DVR, had some Buffalo Wild Wings, and I was hooked. I was like, I got to find more of this guy's fights. And I searched the internet, and I started watching Manny Pacquiao fights and getting up to current with what he was doing. He's the guy who helped me fall back in love with the sport of boxing. It's crazy to think that, but he's that guy, and I'm gonna miss him. I'm glad he's not sticking around past his expiration date per se, but he's done a phenomenal job for the sport, and all I can say is thank you for all that he's done.
Amazing fighter. I was privileged to be able to see him multiple times, got a chance to interview him in depth. We had a long conversation. I mentioned it in the tweet. We talked about everything. We even talked about colorism and skin whitening problems in the Philippines. He was very candid, very open with me. And he's everything that you want in a fighter. He's not concerned about his losses. No one cares that he has 8 losses. We care what he gave in the ring. He gave everything. Fought everybody across 8 weight classes. And the most amazing thing for me, this man started his career in 1995. So I want to bring some context to that. Okay, 1995, and you can do the math if you want to figure out my age, but I was starting high school, freshman. When he won his first title in 98, he was a flyweight, and I believe it was Chatchai Saskul was the person that he beat for his first title. 1998, what was going on in 98? I was still in high school. Miseducation Lauryn Hill just came out. Total Request Live, remember that from MTV? That came out.
Yes.
DMX had 2 albums, and he was the top of the hip-hop world. When we look on the rock side, what was it? 98 Offspring, Pretty Fly for a White Guy. Remember that song? That was at the top of the chart. Mm-hmm. That's what was going on in 98, just culturally. And if you look at the top 10, I looked at the Ring Magazine top 10 about earlier today when I heard about his retirement. The top 10 was number 1, Oscar De La Hoya, number 2, Roy Jones, 3, Evander Holyfield, number 4, Felix Trinidad, number 5, Mark Too Sharp Johnson, number 6, Shane Mosley, number 7, Ricardo Lopez, 8 was Floyd, number 9 was Prince Nassim, and number 10 was Johnny Tapia. And he has went through 4 decades. Yes, he wasn't even considered a pound-for-pound fighter back then. And to see where he's gone, this actual retirement, I'm actually comfortable with, because if he wasn't running for the president, I'd be like, he's probably going to fight again. He's going to get that itch. But I at least know he has something that's going to keep him very occupied, where he's not going to have time to even think about getting in the ring. So I'm happy about that. I do have some concerns about, what his quality of life is going to be, not now, but like 20 years from now, because you never know when that stuff will show up. Everybody pays the price when you're that great in the ring, when you've given so much of yourself, fought 4 decades, fought killers, even fights where he's like on paper dominated. If you look at that Margarito fight, he busted Margarito up bad, but that was a rough fight for him, fighting somebody that big and that pace that they were going at. Fights like that, they show up later. So I'm hoping that he actually has a strong quality of life that he deserves. If we had 3 or 4 fighters like him, boxing would be in a great place. Before he fought Ugas, which was a terrible matchup that he took anyway, without any qualms, he was going to fight Errol Spence. At 42 years old? Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So I hope we get more fighters like him. There's too much emphasis on being undefeated, too many politics. The fact that we as media have to discuss more the outside of the ring mess than actual fight is the problem.
Yeah, you look at his resume, it's a who's who of, current, past fighters. It's just amazing. Like you said, you guys who, could be legitimate here at 147 going forward. Keith Thurman at one time, no pun intended there, was considered to maybe be the future of the welterweight division before he decided to be a semi-retired fighter. He's fought Adrian Broder, Lucas Batiste, Jeff Horn, very durable guy, Jesse Vargas. The Tim Bradley fights, that's neither here nor there. Obviously, for me, I do feel that, and I still have a little, again, more bitterness towards the Floyd Mayweather fight, because I felt on both sides we got that 5 years past its expiration date, to where I will openly admit, and people don't believe me when I say this, I've still never watched that fight. to this day, I've still never watched that fight out of my sheer stubbornness, ignorance, bitterness, whatever words you want to use, because I told everyone the fight was going to happen the way it's happened. It was going to happen. Pacquiao had 3 rounds to get something done. If not, he was going to get picked apart and just lose like all those Floyd Mayweather opponents have done. And I just had no interest in it. And, you know, this is what we got. So, I mean, kudos to him for all that he's done. I hope for Manny Pacquiao's sake that he's doing the right thing, is going to do right by the people of the Philippines, because I don't know if you've met any Filipino Americans or talked to them during fight weekends out in Vegas when Manny fought. The amount of pride that they had in him and what he did for them, the motivation he would give them, oh man, those people love that guy. So, I mean, I hope for his sake he does right by the people, doesn't screw them over, doesn't do like our politicians do here in America, that he actually looks out for the people, because those people truly and honestly embrace him. He is a hero to them. So, again, I know nothing about Filipino politics or what's going on over there, but from what I see, I hope, you know, things work out to his advantage to where he does right by the people if he gets in that position. Now, I will say this, though, Ismael, as you said, you wonder if he's going to get the itch. If he were to lose his run for president, which, you know, is not a slam dunk, and we all know it being here in America, we know politics can be corrupted. They can be a little sketchy. They can be like California judges or judges down in Texas, to where those scorecards look funny in the light. So those guys look funny in the light over the Philippines, to where what happens if that is the scenario? What, you know, he loses. Would we see him again? Like, would he be enticed by the money? You know, that's something that I'll, you know, obviously keep an eye on to see if he wins. And if he wins, I don't think we'll see him again. But if he were to lose his presidential bid, that could open up Pandora's box to some real interesting things for him next year. So I guess I'm going to leave that to be continued.
Yeah, I put it 60-40 that he would come back if he lost. Yeah, I would bet that he would, because especially if it's like a dominant loss where there's like no controversy, no need for a recount or anything. I would definitely see him thinking, okay, I need to fall back on, you know, what I love. Because at that point, you'll just be sitting in the house, you know, just reflecting on, you know, probably the biggest loss of your career, loss in your home country. You know, how am I going to get these people back loving me again? Oh, I can get back in the ring. So I would hedge bets on that happening. So unfortunately, fortunately, I hope he does win, so we don't have to experience that.
Yeah. I mean, it's nothing worse than, you know, this trend that's going on, and I don't even say the fighters' names or these events by name, because I can't stand them. I don't like these older fighters doing these quote unquote exhibitions and still wanting to fight, and I don't want that. I don't need to see that. I mean, I tweeted this out because I saw a fight poster, blew my mind. DeMarcus Chop Chop Corley is going to have another sanctioned fight. He's in an actual boxing match, I think in the DMV area, if memory serves me correct, here next month.
Wow.
So, you know, it comes to a point in time, and it really sucks for professional boxers that a lot of them don't do right with their money. And we see this in all sports, but unfortunately we see this a lot in boxing, to where they're hanging on because this is all they know. They don't have a plan B. They don't know what to do once the fame is gone. They continue to fight on, and like you said, it takes a toll on your body. The human body's not meant to be hit. I mean, this is why we see football players broken down at age 45, and I mean, we're seeing this, and unfortunately as well, we've talked to a lot of young fighters, I know both of us have, that they're in their early 20s and they sound punch drunk, and it's like, oh, it's awkward, it's bad, and you know, but this is the price they pay for being in the sport they're in. So I hope, I'm like you, I hope for all things positive that he does win, so we don't see him come back, but it's boxing. Money talks, so we'll see.
And, you know, the most unfortunate thing about that is, you know, when these fighters come back, most of the time we don't hear about it because, you know, boxing is not in the public eye like that. And, like, we know because we keep up with it. That's how you know about Chop Chop Corley. But guys like that, Sergio Martinez coming back, it's always under the radar. It's not off the TV. We don't even know how bad that they really look. until it gets bad, to the point where they start having visible brain damage and impairment. But, when you're mid-40s, late 40s, 50s, guys still getting in the ring, we have so many horror stories like that, and it's just like they don't know what else to do. A lot of these guys have been fighting since they were 15 when they started training, or younger than that, turning pro at 19. They've done it their whole entire life, thinking that, their body would never break down.
It's crazy. And you mentioned Sergio Martinez, who did just have a fight this past weekend. I mean, he's now 3-0 in his comeback since losing to Miguel Cotto back in June of 2014. So, I mean, we're talking,
wow,
7 years ago since that loss.
And remember how bad his knees were back then.
Oh, man. It was. And the thing is this, and you know this from working with me, that I'm a huge Miguel Cotto fan. I mean, I loved the fact that he won the fight, but I can't lie to myself. He did not face a Sergio Martinez who had any business being in the ring then, and that was in 2014. Now he's fighting these fights over in Spain. He scored 2 knockouts. Like I said, he just had a unanimous decision win over Brian Rose this past weekend. He's now in the top 50 ranked in the world. Somebody told me, and I'll have to do my research here, but there was a rumor that one of the sanctioning bodies has already had him in their top 10. I hope that's not the case.
Oh, man. Please don't.
So I'll have to do my research.
That's criminal.
But again, this is what boxing does. I mean, we see guys continue to come back and have fights, and I mean, for every George Foreman there is who can come back after years away and become heavyweight champion, then kind of think about how the last few fights he had, it didn't end up being the greatest for him. So I just want him to stop. I really want him to stop. It's not good times. But what else is on your mind? What other subjects you have that you want to touch on here on tonight's show? I mean, we got ample time. Like, whatever you got, throw it my way.
Okay, so let's see. What I posted earlier today, I did an interview with Nico Ali Walsh. A lot of you know that he is Muhammad Ali's grandson, just turned pro over the summer, scored a knockout. He's going to be on the Jamel Herring, Shakur Stevenson undercard on October 23rd, fighting in the second pro fight. So to be determined, he's very excited about that because a lot of people know Ali does have history down here. His first comeback fight after a 3-year layoff was against Jerry Quarry here in Atlanta. Even before that, he did a sparring session at my alma mater, Morehouse College, in preparation of that fight. So a lot of rich history, and, of course, the Olympic torch lighting in 96. So it's kind of a legacy continuing. But with the interview that we did something a little different. So first of all, I wanted him to tell me his top 5 Muhammad Ali fights and why. So he had some interesting choices. We talked about that. He even gave me his take on what, in his opinion, would be the best mythical matchup and arguably the greatest fight of all time, which in his opinion would be his grandfather Ali versus Tyson Fury. So that was a very interesting conversation, just thinking about how those press conferences would have went stylistically, that matchup. So we went through all that. It's about a 19, 20-minute interview, very in-depth. He's a very candid kid. So I know people are kind of feeling like he's riding his grandfather's coattails, but I think this might change your opinion of him. No pretension, no arrogance. We don't have a Chavez Jr. case going on. So I definitely wish him the best. I didn't have a negative view of him beforehand, but, I had question marks. You were thinking, is this just something because, you want to get attention, or do you really love the sport? So I definitely have an idea that he really loves boxing and will put his best foot forward, which I kind of got just by the fact that Bob Arum took him on, but he really convinced me with that interview. So that interview is up on the website now, beachboxingmayhem.com. Check that out. Let's see what else. I know we're going to talk about the Knicks, so we'll hold up on that for a second. I know you mentioned that. The other thing I want to mention that people might not be aware of, I am working on a true crime book about the Mafia, which is kind of throwing people off. It's about the true story about 4 brothers who were involved in organized crime, Jewish, Russian Jews in the 1920s and 30s in Brownsville, Brooklyn. If you want to look them up now, the last name is Amberg, Amberg. So you can look up Amberg Brothers Brooklyn. They were fierce. They basically controlled all the rackets in Brownsville. They ended up getting hooked up with the mob. They did a lot of stuff with Murder, Inc. as far as doing a lot of hits. They also worked as muscle under Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel. So they had a very, very strong reputation, and they also did muscle for Charles Lucky Luciano, and arguably some hits that I think may have been done by him, by them, some famous Mafia hits. So I'm doing research on that to kind of put all that together, but there was a lot of other research I did that didn't make the book, which is just as viable. So if you go on my Twitter page or even go on beatboxingmayhem.com, it's a pinned article. The name of the article is Gangster Era Reborn. Scenes from the Prohibition underworld. So basically I have never before seen photos of famous Mafia hits from the 1920s and 30s that were basically in the vaults up in New York City, up in their archives. I was able to find all of them. I got them digitized, got them all published. So they, viewer discretion advised. If you have any, if you're type of squeamish or anything about murder scenes or autopsies and all that, then stay away. But if that's your thing, you're interested in the Mafia, you'll get a big kick out of all that stuff. So I'm hoping to have the book done by the end of this year. I already have a publisher that's interested, so that's kind of extra motivation. And the biggest motivation I actually got happened recently, maybe about earlier this month, maybe the end of October. Meyer Lansky's grandson actually hit me on Instagram and wished me good luck on the book. So I was like, I got to make sure I get this book done now because, I want to make sure I get it right because this is definitely outside of anything I've ever done before. Different topic, especially when we're talking about things that happened 80, 90 years ago. You want to make sure you get everything right, especially when you're talking about a different culture with, Russian Jews and things like that. So I've discovered a lot of new stuff, a lot of new historical stuff. I think people who have been researching the Mafia for a while will be very happy with it. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from a lot of different authors, established authors in the Mafia. So my main thing is I hope I get people more motivated to realize there's a lot more information that's still out there. Because the stuff that I found, nobody's touched. It's been basically just sitting there. So even all these years later, there's still information to be discovered. So anybody that you feel you got a book inside you, especially with true crime and all that, just go out there and do the research. When I started, everything started coming together. And one last point about that kind of let me know the universe was moving with me. When I did their ancestry tree, from the 1920s and all that on down to today, I was able to contact some of their relatives. And guess where their relatives live? Here in Atlanta, Georgia. One of them worked down the street from me. So I was like, that told me right then and there I'm on the right track. I got no excuse not to get this book down now. So that's my big goal, to get that knocked out, before we hit 2022.
Now, what made you kind of dive into, obviously I've known you for obviously being a huge Knicks fan and a boxing pundit. What made you go to, that world of the mobsters? Like what kind of led you down that trail to where you said, I want to work on a project that's focused on that? What sparked that interest in you to do that?
So you know what, I started thinking about that recently because somebody else asked me, and it really started with my great-grandmother, and I'm kind of showing my age again with this. So when I went to go visit her, she lived up in Westchester County, New York, White Plains. People know that's a suburb of New York City. So when I would go and visit her, she had this big bookcase. She was a big reader, and she had really two types of books up there. She had romance novels like Daniel Steele and stuff like that. So 8, 9-year-old me was not interested in any of that. The other books she had up there, Mafia books, true crime books, stuff about the Philly mob, New York mob. And the first book I actually read was a book called Meyer Lansky and the Gangster Life that she had up there. That's the first book I actually read, Mafia-driven at all. And it also coincided with a movie that I liked at that time that that my mother took me to see. You might be too young to remember this, Brandon, but there was a movie that Warren Beatty made called Dick Tracy in 1990.
Yes,
that movie, you might have seen that movie, but watching that movie and reading that book at the same time, it kind of just got me enamored with looking into that history because it was just so fascinating to me to think there was a time when, number one, alcohol was illegal, but then number two, people were killing each other over it. My mind could not wrap around that. So just looking at that whole era and then looking at the fact that, jazz was exploding at the time, culturally things were changing. It was a very, very fascinating time. So that's what kind of got me sparked into just being interested in Mafia books and organized crime from that particular time frame. Now, this actual book, that kind of got sparked in, I want to say maybe 2015, 2016 is when I actually first read about the Ambergs, because they were notorious in their time, but they're not really that known now. Most people, that name doesn't register. But I've read something where somebody said that they consider them like the worst Jewish criminals that ever were raised in America. So I'm like, Okay, so that type of title right there just made me want to look into them to find out why they were so bad in the first place to get that type of title. And then the fact that there were 4 brothers and all of them were involved in organized crime, that was very unique to me because I think there's only one other case like that. These group of brothers called the Gunners that were out of Chicago, and they were rivals to Al Capone during that time frame. But to have that many brothers involved in crime, and nearly all of them were killers. So you had 3 guys that were like killers. You had one that was kind of the brains of the operation, and then you had another one that was kind of on the back burner. So to have that type of versatility in their group, it kind of explained to me why they were so fearsome. And they were independent for a long time. They weren't actually consolidated into the Mafia until kind of the end of their reign. And that kind of became their undoing because even though they got involved with Murder Inc. and all that, they still wanted to be independent. And the head of Murder Inc. at that time was Albert Anastasia. And they ended up crossing hairs because they killed somebody associated with Anastasia that wasn't sanctioned. And then that kind of started a war and led to their downfall. So when I was researching all this stuff, and I started looking around, I'm like, nobody's written about them? And nobody had. There was like little passages, but nothing really in depth. So then when I started researching some of the murders that they might have been involved in and what they were up to, I started reading stuff about they may have been the first people to originate the strangulation methods that you see in a lot of Mafia movies. They said that might have came from them. They used to rope tie people to the point where if you moved a certain way, you would basically strangle yourself because you were hogtied. They were saying a lot of that stuff originated with them. They used ice picks a lot. They used to dump people in boxes and throw them out in the street, all types of crazy stuff. And a lot of that seems like it started with them and their mob. So that's what got me starting to write into it. And then even at the beginning, I was kind of wondering, like, well, am I going to find enough stuff to actually create a whole book? That I wasn't sure about. But as I kept researching, going up to the New York archives, there was great people up there to help me find stuff. I don't know if you ever remember microfiche. That was I still had to use that type of stuff to look at old files and everything. They were able to give me all the old stuff, mugshots and everything from that era. And, I got enough now for a book. So I actually might have enough for a side project, too. That's where that article I told you about came from, because there's just so much information that I found that's not even related to them, just the Mafia in general. So I was also a little concerned, because you know what I look like. Everybody's seen my picture, black kid, long dreadlocks. I'm like, what's the reception going to be when I'm talking about this stuff? So I was a little nervous with that first article that I put out in January, but, everybody was very supportive, asking me when the book is coming out. Am I going to do a part 2? All this type of stuff. So unfortunately, COVID has kind of put a damper on everything. You can't go on site and visit the archives anymore. What they've done now is basically you can order stuff online. It does take a while, but I have been able to get some updated information. I may have some new stuff that might be coming before the year is out. It really depends because they're changing facilities. But in the meantime, I definitely have enough to get this book done, so it's all about writing it, getting things together. And here's the funny thing. I'm actually looking for Mike Tyson. I want to see if I can get him involved, because I found out through a little birdie that he's also like an organized crime aficionado, like especially from that era, because they were from Brownsville. He grew up in Brownsville. So I'm really interested to know if he's ever heard of these guys. I know he's heard of Murder Inc., of course, and Lepke. He was another guy that was in charge of Murder Inc. I've heard him reference them before in interviews, but not the actual Amberg guys that I'm researching. So I'm trying to track you down, Mike. So if you're listening, get in touch. I want to know if he knows anything about these guys, because, hey, I'd love him to do the forward of the book, if I can get him involved in it. I definitely think it's right up his alley. So that's how everything kind of started with my great-grandmother.
That's so awesome, man. I mean, to know, and here's the thing, like, I always have known you as being a very educated, smart brother. I look, you was always the voice of reason, a very calm person amongst us when we did the Ruckus podcast. You were always the soothing one who all kind of like, okay, when you bring this back to where it needs to go, not saying we're all dummies or nothing, but you just were a notch above in regards to that, bringing us togetherness with that. And hearing you doing this research here for the book, and you're writing a book, it's the evolution, man, is dope to see. And when that comes out, that's something we're going to make sure we support here on the show. So you keep me in earshot. I'm not just saying that as lip service. I support my people when I can, when in reason, because some people be on some more bullshit. But within reason.
I understand. I appreciate that.
Trust me, I will be buying a copy of the book when it comes out to support and making sure I let my followers and listeners know all about it. So, man, I'm proud of you. Keep working hard. Keep doing your thing with that. You're an inspiration, man. People like you who do the writing, and I always tell Adam every time he's on the show, Adam's a great writer. I'm not. I suck at it. I'm good at doing this for the most part when I'm sober and when I'm not sick. So this is what we do a podcast. I can't write words.
I
shit.
appreciate
Everybody
that. And
knows
Adam
that.
is amazing. Yeah, Saturday Night Boxing, he's amazing. He's so succinct with how he puts things together, puts everything in perspective. That is how, to me, boxing journalism should be. And yeah, I love my YouTubers. I love my hot takes and all that. But the core, like you say, real hip-hop, quote-unquote, so real boxing journalism, I look at Adam. He's like a template because he does amazing stuff. And he's quick, too. I'm always like, I could write something like that, but you need to give me a week. Hit the fight be Saturday, and he'll have it up on Monday. So that's part of the game right there, to be able to get your thoughts out quickly. He's amazing. And like you were saying, it's like, we're not getting any younger. Is this something you want to do? Do it. Because, I had doubts for about a year or two about this book. I can't do it. I'm a different background. If you feel it in your spirit, just get it out and do it. That's one thing COVID taught me. Sitting at home, working from home, having all that time to think about everything. Whatever you want to do, get that shit done. I got that first article done, got the big reception. Now it's on to the book. Now I'm thinking about doing an organized crime podcast with all the stuff that didn't fit the book. So we all got opportunities. So I'm like, get your stuff out there and just, get it done. Get it done.
That's phenomenal to hear. Now, one thing that will be taking up a little bit of your time here, because we're getting close to that time. NBA season starting to kind of slowly turn and get its way back. I'm hyped as a sports fan. This last 18 months has been extremely bizarre to watch sports and see how things have evolved and developed, and you can go see things and you can't, but it's limited spacing. But now everything's kind of quasi back to normal as it's going to be for some time being. But the NBA is coming back, and I'm happy about that. We're off of a good run from the Olympics. KD, to me, proved that he is the best player in the league. Some people would argue that, but that's neither here nor there. Him and Giannis are 1 and 2 to me. I mean, you can flip-flop them all day. We know you're a diehard, loyal New York Knicks fan. And New York back. After what they did last year and the run they had, ended up short, to the hands of Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks. But is New York basketball back? Is there a reason to have, some faith in what Tom Thibodeau's doing, that this is something that's going to be sustainable and you're going to see it build upon here this season?
Oh, absolutely. I am very encouraged, more encouraged than I've been in probably close to a decade. So are the Knicks back to being title contenders? No, but they are back to being a competent franchise. And that is all we've wanted for a long time. So they are putting everything in place to continue building on what they did last season. Everybody is improving. I'm still a big believer in R.J. Barrett. I feel he's progressing very, very well. I know there's been some projections of him eventually turning into a Jimmy Butler type, which I do see. He's a very, very hard worker. His three-point shooting, I did not see that big of an improvement happening last year, especially because he had a very rough start to the beginning of the year. I think there was one stretch where he missed, I want to say like 23 consecutive three-pointers, and he ended up shooting 40% from three for the year. So an amazing turnaround. I think he's a great building block. I love Julius Randle. I believe, the fact that he picked up the challenge after the year before, where we wanted to run him out of the city because he was just playing so bad. He turned into an all-star last year. I did not see that. Another great building block. I still believe, to really be a contender, we still need to figure out a way to land a superstar. I don't know how that's going to happen. But, until that happens, just continue building the right way. Don't make any crazy asinine trades. Be stable. And all the moves they made this year were stabilizing moves. We have a good backcourt now. If Kemba Walker's knee holds up, he'll be steady. Rose is great off the bench. We got Julius Randle back. We have a next year version of R.J. Barrett. And then we have Evan Fournier, who can create his own shot. So I'm very happy, and hopefully Mitchell Robinson can stay healthy. He's in the contract year, so it wouldn't surprise me if he shows out and has a really great breakout year as long as he can stay healthy. So I'm very happy with where we are. It wouldn't surprise me if we repeated at the 4th or 5th seed. I think that's where I'm kind of seeing us happen because, a lot of the other teams improved. Miami's improved. We know what the Nets are. We know what the Bucks are. So it's kind of funny you mentioned the Hawks because living down here in Atlanta since 1999, I've also, come to enjoy the Hawks too. So I wasn't conflicted. Of course, I was going for my Knicks. But it was very interesting to see them finally play each other. And I went to one of the home games down here. And usually when the Knicks play here, it's basically MSG South. It's basically all New York. Because, so many New Yorkers and tri-state people down here, we take over the arena. But it shows you how much of a star Trae Young is now. No, when we came, we were outnumbered. It was an old Atlanta came out for this team now. So he's captured the imagination of Atlanta. Atlanta basketball has their own identity now. And I think that kind of atmosphere that they were able to do in that run that they had last year, I think that is going to help attract boxing down here, too, to just see how rabid the sports space was down here for those series. And they were only one series away from the finals, so they have a lot to build on, too. I think this is a nice rivalry that's building because it's always been kind of a rivalry between Atlanta and New York culturally, even from the rap scene, and then just so many people from the tri-state moving down here and thinking they can just set up shop and take over. You don't see it as much with the younger people, but the older people, there's still a little friction there, regional friction. So it's going to be fun if we can get another playoff series between the two. So I'm kind of hoping for that, especially with Julius. I want him to redeem himself after that last series, so I would love if we can get a rematch this next postseason.
Yeah, I'm actually expecting some big things out of the Knicks this year. I mean, I think the Celtics are down, so I think that's one team they won't really have to worry about as much. I do like the adding of Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier, obviously from the Celtics. I think that is a great combination there. I still wonder what's going to happen with the Nets if they will have all three of their big three for all their games this season, which is, with Kyrie being Kyrie. It makes you wonder a little bit about that. I mean, really, I think the team that's going to be the biggest obstacle for them is still going to be the Bucks. I do like Atlanta. I think Atlanta is just going to get better with more experience they have. Miami's always going to be a tough go regardless because that's just the way Miami is built. I don't see them struggling or taking a step back. I look for Chicago to be much more improved as well this season with the adding of DeMar DeRozan. I'm just hyped for the NBA season as a whole coming back. This is always a fun time of the year for me because you've got NBA, you've got NFL football, you've got college football going, you've got baseball playoffs starting to come into fruition too. So if you're a sports fan, there's always something to watch. Not to mention we still get big boxing. I mean, we've got November, right. And I said this to Adam last week, November of this year on paper has the makings of being maybe the greatest November of boxing we've ever had because typically the fourth quarter of, and really even the first 2 months of the following year are slow times for boxing. A lot of times you don't see a lot of big events. You don't see a lot of cards, period, because sometimes there's no budget for it and just they don't want to compete with, the other things going on, winter sports and just in general you don't see a lot. But that trend has changed in the recent years, and I think this November we've got, obviously Canelo fighting is always big. We've got Fulton Figueroa finally happening. Let's cross the things that happens this time. We have Crawford Porters we talked about earlier. November is a big month, and it's just a good time to be a sports fan. I mean, so I'm thankful that all this is happening all at once. I can set my fat ass in front of a couch and find something to watch on Saturday. I have no excuse for saying there's no TV watch. It's tons to watch in regards to being a sports fan.
Oh, absolutely. And November, like you said, for boxing, we've had some great fights over the course of the year, just like any year, but really to kind of end the year on a bang is always good. Going to the next year feeling hopeful. We got some big fights. We got some unifications, a little bit of clarity. It's great to have. So I'm looking forward to it. As far as which fight I'm anticipating the most, probably Chocolatito and Estrada. Because that second fight, as great as it was, the scorecards kind of left a sour taste in my mouth. So I really want them to kind of finalize their rivalry, so to speak. Now, it's funny, Crawford and Porter is going to be on my birthday. So I was thinking about, I was like, do I want to spend my birthday with my fellow boxing degenerates? I don't know. So I'm still debating whether I want to be out in Vegas for my birthday because I haven't really, like you said, really not a lot of big fights in November that I can remember going to. You know, the one offhand, I think Cotto and Pacquiao was that in November? I want to say it was. I know I went to that one. I think that was in November, but off the top of my head, I don't think a lot of fights, Vegas fights that I went to happened in November.
I think that one was, and I know Cotto Canelo was in November because I remember actually being out there and being cold because I didn't actually pack a jacket. But that was also in November. So rarely do we have them. I guess it's been kind of a different trend over the last few years, and we can thank guys like Canelo for wanting to fight multiple times in a year, to where we do have that, that pop-up fight in November or this early part of December. But we typically don't see it. I mean, and this year we're getting that. I mean, for me, the fight that I'm actually looking forward to is Figueroa-Fulton, because I honestly think whoever wins that fight, especially if these guys have the performances like they've had in both of their previous fights, they're going to break out and become a major star and become a major, major player in 2022. So I hope that fight doesn't suck. I don't see it in any way sucking at all. I think Stephen Fulton has all the tools to be a star, to be a big star, and definitely be one of these next generation fighters coming out of Philly. Figueroa was a guy that I thought Louis Neary was going to crush, and then I looked at the size difference and was like, oh, shit, what was I thinking?
Right.
And he completely steamrolled him, and that just completely shocked me. And I got to look at Figueroa in a different light here. It's like both of the Figueroa brothers make fights more difficult than they need to. They could obviously box a hell of a lot more than what they do. They turn fights into being dog fights, which leaves their reign of being on top and being able to fight high-quality fights, a short window for them having that style. But, damn, it is fun to watch, and I think Figueroa-Fulton is going to deliver, and that may be a late candidate for Fight of the Year. That's really going to sneak up on some people. So that's one I'm really got my eyes peeled for here in November.
Yeah, Figueroa, I think it's with their styles, and particularly with this one with Fulton, it's impossible for them to be in bad fights. So I'm expecting also a great fight, too. I, of course, give the edge to Fulton just skill-wise, but Figueroa is going to test him. Like I said, with the size that he has and the aggression that he brings, we'll see what Fulton's motor is. I think he's shown enough where he's going to be able to win. I don't see a knockout per se, but I think he does dominate the second half of the stretch with clean punching to pull out the win. But it's going to be a rough one. It's definitely going to be a seesaw battle, especially in those first half of the fight period. So I'm definitely looking forward to that one, too. It's going to surprise a lot of people. But I do want to ask you, as far as Crawford and Porter, how do you see that one going? I've seen a few people actually picking Porter, which surprised me.
It just really depends, man. It depends on if Porter makes it an ugly, gruff fight, which we know Porter has the capability of doing. We've seen him do that in fights. If, he tries to kind of be the aggressor and trying to make it somewhat of a, I don't want to use the word dirty fight, but make it messy. Make it to where Crawford doesn't get space, unable to get into rhythm. He does that. He's got a legitimate chance. If he goes out in any way, shape, or form and tries to just outbox Terrence Crawford, God help him. It's not going to end well at all. That would not be what he wants to do. He wants to make this gruff, ugly, and rough, not aesthetically pleasing to the eyes, which some Sean Porter fights can be that way. He does that. I think he's got a chance. That may be the only window of chance he has. I just don't see him outboxing Terrence Crawford. A point that was brought up, and I got to give full credit to Adam Abramowitz again for this one. He brought up on last week's show when we talked about this, was he didn't like the lapses he's seen in Terrence Crawford's defense over the last few fights, and the way he's reacted to getting hit. He says he could be susceptible to a knockout, but he doesn't think it's going to come from Sean Porter. Doesn't think Porter has the power to pop to really do that, to land that one shot. Porter looks the part, always in phenomenal shape. Damn it, he beat the heavyweight champion, Oleksandr Usyk, at one time. So, I mean, we know he can fight with anyone in any weight class, but I don't think he's going to have all the tools to beat a guy like Terrence Crawford right now. And knowing what Terrence Crawford has at stake here and him finally getting one of these guys, I think Terrence Crawford is going to show up and show out. here in November. I really think he's going to try to put on a performance to kind of have people say, okay, we really need to make sure, we need to accelerate this Spence-Crawford fight sooner than later.
And one thing a lot of people haven't brought up, on Porter's side, Porter's 33. He's been in some wars and took some heavy shots, from Spence, from Thurman. So I can't get it out of my mind. If he tries to make this a rough fight, he's going to run into something, and at some point you just got to think that chin is going to fold a little bit at some point. And I can see that happening in this fight where he gets caught with something and actually gets stopped. That would not surprise me. I'm not sure I'm confident in picking that because of, what we've seen from Porter in the past, being able to rally. But I'm starting to think that a stoppage is going to happen. Just, because if he's reckless like that, that's his best chance, kind of like how we were talking about with Usyk and Joshua in the rematch, but it makes him more susceptible to getting knocked out because Crawford's a master counterpuncher. He's a switch hitter. He gets full leverage on the shots because of how lanky he is and his height. I just can't get out of my mind Porter running into something, trying to rush in and getting caught with either an uppercut, kind of similar to what Benavidez got caught with late, and a right hand to finish him off. So I definitely think, Crawford with his mean streak and the fact that he's waited this long for this opportunity, I definitely see him taking out all his aggression on Sean. And we all love Sean, so I kind of don't relish the thought of that, but that's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah.
I think he's going to make Sean an example.
I kind of have that feeling, too, and it's like you said, it's bad because we don't want to – Sean's a good dude. Like, we don't want to see that happen to him, but we know what Terence Crawford's capable of, and, to even point that out in regards to Sean Porter, he did go down against Errol Spence in the 11th. He also got knocked down in the 12th round by Adrian Broner, who, again, is not someone who's a knockout artist. And this was an Adrian Broner fighting at a catch weight between 140 and 147. So it's not like it was Adrian Broner, peak Adrian Broner. It was, suspects Adrian Broner. So him going down to a guy like that in the 12th round, makes you also wonder, okay, a guy like Terence Crawford, like you said, who has that mean streak that once he smells blood in the water, it's a wrap. He's one of the best closers in boxing, obviously today, and one of the better ones we've had in recent history. So, I think that may be the best way of putting it. He's going to be made an example of. So it could get ugly. It really could.
Yeah. And this will be interesting. If it does start getting ugly, we know Dad's in the corner. We saw that with Gabriel Flores. Will Sean's dad, do the right thing early on? I think he will. He seems a little bit different from the other fighting dads. I don't see him letting Sean take unnecessary punishment, but if it comes to that, there'll be something to keep an eye on because, we have seen dads freeze in the past 4 when their sons are begging them, one more round. We'll see.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, again, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm kind of like you. Do I want to pull the trigger and make that trek out to Vegas? Tickets do go on sale for our listeners here October the 4th, so that's Monday. Tickets as low as $54. It's going to be through accesstickets.com or access.com. Google it. Go to Top Rank's website or follow them. They'll let you know how to get the tickets. But it's going to be at the Michelob Ultra Arena, formerly known as the Mandalay Bay Event Center. It sounds so weird calling it the Michelob Ultra. Like, what the?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Mandalay Bay.
The Mandalay Bay Event Center. That's what I've known it as. That's what we'll continue to call it. So it'll be out there, that end of the strip, which is, I don't know, I've been in Mandalay Bay a few times. Kind of weird out there. It's kind of, I don't want to say it's all to itself, but it's kind of off to itself. But you'll see the giant Raider Stadium out there. It's kind of seedy across the street from Mandalay Bay because it's just near the desert. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that's like, oh, no, I ain't walking down this way like at night. So, hey, but it is it's Vegas. But we'll see. But I do want to see it in the fight before the year's out. I don't know if it'll be that one I'll go to, but it's something I'm definitely interested in seeing for sure. But I think that's going to be the show here tonight. Unless you guys anything else, Ismael, man, I'm all out of ideas.
Let's see. Anything we haven't covered? Oh, so I talked about Red Sox slander. So honestly, I am a casual, very super casual baseball fan. like the Yankees, of course, and all that. The only time I started developing any animosity towards the Red Sox was actually, back in 2004? One was a series where they came back from 0-3 and beat the Yankees. I think they're the only professional team in history that's ever, done that, come back from an 0-3 hole to win the series. That, I think, was the first time I started looking at the Red Sox kind of crazy because they started talking crazy about the Yankees after beating them. I can't remember what year that was. I want to say that was 04 or 05. But I remember that being a big, big deal because no team had ever done that.
That was 04. And I think that was the infamous, I don't know if that was the infamous Red Sox game with Schilling.
I think it was.
I should know that. Yeah.
But how did you end up being a Red Sox fan and you live in Kansas City? I always wondered that.
I get that a lot. Trust me, when I wear the hat, people say, "Oh, you're from Boston." I'm like, no, I'm from Kansas City. They kind of give me like, "Oh." The big thing with me is I've always been a fan of fat baseball players. So it started with Mo Vaughn. Mo Vaun was I thought a fantastic hitter there for the Red Sox. But the guy that I got enamored with and the guy that I became a huge fan of was Big Papi, David Ortiz for the Red Sox, and I just loved his swing. The guy played with a ton of passion, and his broken English I thought was just flat out adorable. And he really was the reason I started, following baseball more and being a Red Sox fan. And obviously I had Pedro Martinez there during the time, and that really helped cultivate my love for the Boston Red Sox, which has now been cemented. I mean, I suffered many years watching them come close, and I thought they would be better, and then sucking, and then winning, nice amount of World Series in a short amount of time. So I think we're due. It's close right now in regards to the wild card rankings. I don't know if they'll be able to get in. They're still 2 games back of the Yankees as we enter in today's game and a half game above the next wild card entry, which I think is the Blue Jays or the Mariners. So, yeah, and I mean, as far as not being any fan of anything Kansas City besides our barbecue, I've never liked the Royals because they were never a winning team as I was growing up. I mean, they won the World Series, I think, when I was too young to even remember them winning the World Series. I mean, they had Bo Jackson, but they never really flourished and did anything in the playoffs when he was here. And other talent they've had, they were good players when they were with the Royals, but the Royals couldn't afford them and trade them off. And then you see these guys flourish. Your Johnny Danish, your Jermaine Dias, who went on to other places and had successful careers after leaving the Royals. So, yeah, it's just like that. As far as the Chiefs go, I just was never a fan of Marty Schottenheimer's style of offense that he ran. So I was never a fan of him, I mean. So, and I got enamored by the Blue Star. I mean, Emmitt Smith was one of my favorite players growing up. He's honestly not a top 5 running back to me. As crazy as that sounds, being a Cowboy fan, he's not a top 5 running back. He's just not. It's guys I will take above him all day. But I've always been a fan of the Cowboys. I hope this year will turn out different from obviously last year, which was a disaster. But, even a garbage can gets a steak. We're going to get our time again to be good and to get back to the Super Bowl. I mean, as long as Tom Brady's alive, it's a slim chance. But, we still hold out hope as Cowboy fans. Every year we suffer, we put ourselves through this and just always hope for the best.
Yeah, you guys are about due. I'm trying to think. So the last rings were I guess the Bills, right? In the 90s?
Yeah.
Those were the last Super Bowl rings? Yeah, okay.
Last Super Bowl
I remember being a kid because I
yeah.
remember how popular they were. Starter jackets, everybody had the Dallas gear and all that. And then after that, it's been a while. But like I said, you guys, that's the thing I love about football is that your fortunes can change so quickly year to year. With basketball, it's kind of like the same group of teams. If you ain't got the superstar, it ain't happening. But you see it all the time in football. A random team that gets some magic together and gets a run going can win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, I would have never thought that, especially here in Kansas City, that Patrick Mahomes would be as successful as he was going to be. Because I didn't think he was that great in college. And the kid, he's magic. I mean, he's struggled a little bit this season, but I never knew he would put it together like he did and go on the run of the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl. And I will say for my city, I'm happy for the city from that aspect. It's definitely a level of pride you see in Chiefs fans here in the city, and that's one thing, no matter, what diverse cultures we all come from here, that brings them together is their love and affection for the Chiefs. Now, once they exit the stadium, well, it's back to hating each other. But for that 3 hours they're in the stadium and that game is on, it's all about the Chiefs' kingdom, and that's something that I love and respect. And that's something I always think in sports in general brings us all together, because it's been many times I've been out to fights, and especially with New Yorkers. And I'm not trying to stereotype New Yorkers, but I've been in weigh-ins and been in places and bars with the Red Sox hat on, and getting confronted by Yankee fans, and then like, you're not even from there. And then they look at me like, we can't mess with this guy. He doesn't know any better. So, I mean, what sports brings us together. I mean, I love everyone in regards to sporting fans except for Philadelphia Eagle fans. They can go to hell. But everyone else, man, I love them all, man. I love them all. And sports will always continue to bring us together. I mean, boxing brings so many diverse cultures together on these fight weekends, no matter what city you're in. People travel from different parts of the world, different parts of the country, and it's always interesting to diverse and meet people. And it's cool, man. It's one of the things that I don't think people really appreciate, and I think now they're starting to appreciate a little bit more, that was taken away for almost a year with COVID, that we can be together. We can have fellowship and watch boxing and watch sports again together. And that's one of the cool things about life that now for me, given what 2020 was, I appreciate and embrace even more. So that's what I said. I hope to go out to another fight before the year is out. If you happen to go out for your birthday, trust me, if we out in Vegas together, I will make sure that you enjoy yourself. That's my town, and I owe Vegas a redo for me being sick when I was there for my birthday in August. So, I'm gonna have to run it back before 2020 is out. I've already said that to the people I know to make sure they have the appropriate bail money to get me, but I'm running it back before the year's out. Trust and believe that. It's just a matter of what weekend I'm going.
I hear you, man. I hear you. And I didn't tell you, so my birthday is actually going to be my 40th birthday. So, if I'm out in Vegas, I got to go crazy. So, if I'm out there, you already know what time I'm on.
Oh, yeah. I know. And just so you know, you're not that far ahead of me, as I will be turning 40 next year. So you're not that far ahead.
Start planning now. Get something together.
He's like,
start planning now.
And I was a freshman. I'm thinking, well, I was like in 8th grade, about to go to my freshman year. So, yeah, we're not that far behind you at all. But, yeah, man, we definitely going to have to figure something out and link up and party and fellowship, and especially if it's a boxing weekend. I would tremendously appreciate it, and I tremendously appreciate you taking out the time out of your schedule to do the show. We got to do this more. We got to make sure that we all link up and keep the positive vibes going. So, Ismael, man, I appreciate you so much coming on the show, and make sure, again, you tell the listeners where they can find all of your work, plug away, everything you got going.
Oh, appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. We definitely got to do this more often. Anytime you need me, just hit me up. I'm there. You can find me at beatsboxingmayhem, all one word, .com. That is the website. That is the Instagram. My Twitter is a little different. It is my first name, which is Ismael. That is I, S as in Sam, M as in Mary, AEL, _BDM, _NYK. I post on there a lot. Of course, I'm posting when there's fights going on and all that. So that's where you can find me at. I'll be giving updates on my website about the book. That's where the Gangsta Era Reborn article is at. So that's a good precursor to everything that's going to be in the book. You can check out that article. I'm picking up the fight interviews, especially now that we're going to have that big Shakur Stevenson fight down here. So if you look on my YouTube page, which is also beatsboxingmayhem.com, you can see that Nico Ali Walsh interview. You can see interviews with Jamel Herring, Shakur Stevenson, Bob Arum. I'm going to try to have some more interviews in the future. For those who don't know, I cover hip-hop too. So I do hip-hop interviews as well. Saigon, I don't know if you guys remember him. He's having a hip-hop battle with Vado, of all people, on October 2nd down here. So I've been trying to get Saigon for an interview. Might get him afterward. But, yeah, you'll see all types of interviews. I'm going to try and pick all that stuff up. Anybody, if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up. I'm very personable. And I look forward to it, guys. We all got to support each other. The business is wide open. Like I said, if you feel you want to do something, just go out there and do it. And if I can help in any way, just let me know.
Absolutely. This is why I appreciate the big homie here, Ismael, for coming on the show. And if you've missed any episodes here at Punch the Face Radio, literally you can find it everywhere. Blog Talk Radio by searching Punch in the Face Radio or any of your favorite streaming platforms, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Audible. Literally, I've figured out we are everywhere. So just literally search Punch in the Face Radio. You'll be able to find the show, listen, subscribe, and share. I would gladly appreciate it. I will be back next week's show, obviously talking Wilder Fury 3, and Lord knows whatever else. Probably more Lopez Cambosa news. But again, Ismael, I appreciate you taking the time here, joining me here this week. So, again, brother, anytime you want to come on and talk anything, especially close to that time to that book getting released, we're getting you back on. Trust me, that's the best believe that's happening.
Oh, appreciate it, man. You will hear me all the way in Atlanta when I finish this book. The world will know. Trust me. I'll be hooping and hollering for like a week straight.
Well, good deal. Well, absolutely, man. But with that being said, I want everyone to stay safe, stay blessed, love one another. It's the only way we can get through this, if I can speak tonight. Please wash your hands, wear your mask, get your shots, people. This week's show, I am Brandon Stubbs, and I am out.